Hey there, and thanks for checking out part 3 of my Relic Partscaster build. I'm just about ready to start spraying my sanding sealer. I wanted to show a little bit about how I've got this thing hooked up. In my last video I explained my little painting stand here. I've got it connected to my little support rod here, drilled right into the neck holes. Only used a stick of wood that's halfway. The reason I did that is that's how the vintage early 60s era Stratocasters were painted. No particular reason. I'm just trying to model it off of that. I figured what the heck, I would do the same thing. I'm sure that someone will tell me, well, that extra bit of lacquer will get in the way and cause a problem. Okay, fair enough. Maybe on that minor micro-millimeter scale it will, but again, I'm just making a sort of a model of an early 60s type of a Stratocaster, so I'm just doing some things similarly just for the heck of it. But you can see it's just screwed in there easily. Now my support rod will hold it up. I'll put it into a little painting station here, and we'll get going. One of the things that I've chosen not to do yet, I saw somebody else's build, I think Nathan Sinks, and he had made the iron acetate stain to give the aged wood look, and he applied it over the whole body before he applied any paint. And I was thinking about that. I've made up my iron acetate, but I've decided I'm going to wait until apply it into specific locations later on. My thought being is that this is a relic, trying to make it a relic look, and if there was any aged wood, that would occur only under the parts of the paint that had been chipped. It wouldn't get you that look under other parts of the paint. So I'm going to wait and I'm going to apply it afterwards, and we'll see how it works. Maybe it works out well, maybe it doesn't, but we're going to give it a shot anyway, so that's what we'll do. Okay, also, when I just read some, got my guitar lacquer white vinyl sealer here. Instructions: sand the wood to 320 grit, which I've already done. I've already cleaned off the surface, and it says you to apply several thin coats, gives better coverage than one heavy coat. There you go. It doesn't really talk about how much time in between, but I'll probably give it maybe about an hour in between coats or so. But I'll spray it in several light coats until we coat the entire body in this white vinyl sealer, which will give a good base too, since we're going to paint in that Daphne blue. It's solid and it's light colored, so that'll help that get the good color. Safety equipment, as always, we're painting with nitrocellulose vinyl sealer at this point, but we'll also move on to the nitrocellulose lacquer. So you've got to make sure you've got some good protective equipment for breathing to keep the harmful fumes out, and I've got some iPro as well. Okay, here in a second then we'll be set up and we'll actually start, we'll start painting. First pass, as you can see, it is light, and I will be doing multiple coats. I'm probably going to continue spraying until the can is gone, but this is intentionally light on this first, and then we'll go ahead and coat it up. All right, so it's just been a couple of seconds, and one of the things I already noticed is as the sealer has begun to dry, there's already been some grain raising. Even though I sanded it to 320, I didn't do a wet down and grain raising, so it looks like the sanding sealer has done a little bit of grain raising. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to let this go ahead and completely dry. Probably means I'll have to let it sit for an entire day, and then I'm going to come back and knock that grain back with some 400 or 320 again. Knock that raised grain back down before I go apply any additional coats, and then we'll see how it goes. Hey, so I'm back. As we talked about in the last video, I noticed that there seemed to be a little bit of grain raising on the body after just the first coat of my white vinyl sealer. So I wanted to go ahead and stop there before putting anything additional. I'm going to knock down some of that grain that I saw come up. What I'm going to use for that is my foam straight bottomed sanding block, my pipe insulating sanding block, if you will, that I talked about earlier, and some 600 sandpaper that I have, and 400 that I'm going to attach to my blocks here, and I'm just going to give it a nice light sanding. I'm obviously not trying to take any of this sealer off so much, although obviously a little bit will come off, but what I really want to do is get all those areas where it appears like there was some grain raising. I want to go ahead and knock that down before I put some additional coats of the vinyl sealer onto the body. One of the things also I noticed, I'm not really sure, so I'm using this Preval spray attachment here to make my cans a little bit more like a gun. I've used this on other products as well. I'm not sure if it's this can specifically. I don't think it has anything to do with the gun attachment. I think it's the nozzle, but if you notice, I've got a couple of areas where it looks a little bit like it was it's striped, if you will, and that's not because I wasn't going over, you know, half distance on each pass. It just appears like it wasn't coming out entirely evenly on every coat or on every pass that I had. So I just noticed that. I don't know if it's just this can, if it's this particular nozzle. I looked to see if there was anything clogged. I really couldn't tell. So we're going to give it another shot, and since this is the under sealer anyway, the overall, we'll make sure it's totally coated, but I don't think it's quite as critical. So we're going to go ahead and get started on getting some of the sanding ready, and then here we go, and then we'll go back to putting other coats on. There, that seems to have done the trick. It's really smooth all over now. Kind of taken out all those little spots that looked like the grain had come up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and hook it back up to my painting stand, and go ahead and continue coating with my white vinyl sealer as I prep to get ready to paint this thing. All right, we'll see you a little bit later. Okay, well, I'm going to get set up here. I've got got my guitar body on my paint stand. I'm going to go ahead and put my protective gear on, and we're going to go ahead and get started painting. I'm going to let that dry before applying any additional coats, and it looks like it's going to take a little bit more. It doesn't cover fully on every spray. Again, I'm not sure if that's the material that it's made of or if it's the nozzle on the can. I find I'm having to go over similar areas multiple times, which, I mean, to be expected to some extent, but I just thought with this white vinyl sealer it would be a little bit of a more even thick coat. Turns out it is still pretty thin, and so it does require quite a bit. So I'm going to let this coating that I just put on there fully dry, and then I'm going to come back and again apply some more. And my intent is obviously to use as much of the can as I need to make sure it's a nice even coat here, because I am going to go back and sand once again at 400 or 600 at that point before going ahead and applying any of my nitrocellulose lacquer. All right, we'll be back.